Welcome back to Tools for the Pilots, the podcast where we break down the mindset, tactics, and culture of elite aviators and apply them to business, leadership, and life. I am TC, and I'll be your host. If you're getting value from Tools for the Pilots, don't forget to subscribe. We drop mission-critical insights every week, straight from the cockpit to your headset. Today, we are talking about a foundational topic. Not tactics, not tech, but the environment in which teams thrive or fall apart. What does it mean to speak without fear or to take ownership without being called out by the boss, to grow, contribute, and challenge the status quo, even if you're not the boss? Today, we're talking about psychological safety and building empowered teams. And once again, with me, Jason Richardson. He has been with the show from the beginning. Welcome back to the show, Jason.
Thanks, TC. Good to see you again. It's been a little while since we've done a podcast, and good to be back. We touched on psychological safety a bunch of times through our other conversations. You talked about this is not about tactics and tech. This is about something else, and that's a real key part of this whole thing, because when people hear about this, they always think, or they call this a soft skill. This is one of those soft things. This is a HR thing. But increasingly, teams all over the world, it's not like that. This is absolutely critical. It's well known that psychological safety is the most important attribute in high performance teams. Not by itself, it has to be accompanied by other things, but certainly it's absolutely crucial. And I reckon most of my work that I do with clients, and certainly my job as an airline pilot, revolves around increasing psychological safety. So yeah, definitely looking forward to this one.
Let's get into it. Let's give some definitions, okay? What we mean for psychological safety? As you said, we talked already about a little bit in the previous episode. We gave a little of expectation on this discussion. And I like to recall one of the definitions that Bill Walsh was giving when he was talking about Steve Young, one of the best players that he had in those years. And he said, working and communicating in a team, leaders are kings without a crown, allowing team members to be team players, right? So how do you define in your work with leaders and organizations what psychological safety means, and how do you explain to them?
So when I had to come up with a definition for the leadership handbook I wrote, I thought about this quite a bit, and it's kind of a bit of an abstract concept, but the one that I came up with is that psychological safety is that attribute inside a group of people which allows everybody to communicate freely. So that's the short version.
Okay. So Jim Cook likes to say, listen, learn, and lead. Okay. Stimulating effectively curiosity, asking questions. This is his method. But, you gave a definition that's very simplistic, but, it's psychological safety we can define as an impactful tool for coaches as well to explain and to, how can I say, use it in the organization. Now, let's start from the things that are missing when psychological safety is not there. So what is the first sign that psychological safety is missing, and how do leaders usually really react and realize that it's not there?
Easily the most the fastest way to see it is in a meeting. And I have said for a long time, observing a meeting is probably the quickest way to identify the health level of an organization, because in a team, I would say probably a typical team, a corporate team where people go into a meeting room, there's mostly one person talking, and he might ask for some reinforcement, or she might ask for some feedback on the points she's made, but that's not indicative of high psychological safety. So when your team is quiet, that's not a good thing. The team can for sure see things that need to be improved. If you're in a planning meeting, if you're problem solving, if you're just going through your day-to-day business and your team is not coming up with information, things that they think are wrong, ways to improve, that doesn't mean that there's not things that are wrong and there's not ways to improve. It means that the standard of psychological safety or the level is not there yet. So I would say the biggest thing is silence when people are not coming up to you with problems. As a leader, if your people are constantly coming up to you and telling you that, hey, there's an issue with this, we need to fix that up, that's a great sign, because it means people are comfortable to contribute information that they know is a little sensitive or that might be negative.
This is something that as fighter pilots, we know very well. We go into the debriefing, we talked about that in the previous episodes, where we want to analyze failure. We want to deal with failure, okay? We want to deal with mistakes. And effectively, if there is no psychological safety, you're not capable to deal with this failure. And in a good debrief, we have we need to leave the ego there and be and confront with what happened. You're not the leader anymore. You're not the wingman anymore. You need to share what happened in the mission. But there is one thing that we learn and especially I learned at the beginning of my career when the Air Force was a little bit, let's say, old-fashioned. What if failure and mistakes don't even reach the briefing room? Because for us, it was kind of a flight safety matter. We're talking about a dangerous situation, and I don't know, young guy throws the gear down beyond the limits, and he doesn't confess because of the culture that he has in the organization, where he's going to be reprimanded, he's going to be punished. So this is something that we have experienced a long time ago, probably, and nowadays all the organization, especially the high performance one, should let's say, empower people to speak, even if they made a mistake. Okay. When people start covering their backs and not improving, you get this self-preservation over progress. So effectively, you are defending yourself, but the organization doesn't go on, and you go and you mine one of the most important things in teams, which is trust, for example. So what is the shift that leaders need to make to move from a blaming culture to a responsibility? So from fear to learning and effectively coaching.
Well, it's a huge topic. No blame and psychological safety go hand in hand. They're not exactly the same thing, but they go hand in hand. And what you're talking about in debriefing, even when we have things like ACMI, when we have technologies that can reproduce our execution so we can analyze it, there's still always going to be things that people are aware of that have to be voluntarily communicated. And that's what we come to in the debrief. And in a healthy organization, people will say, hey, I did this. Actually, I had this information, but I didn't interpret it the right way. That's why my decision here was invalid or whatever. So people still need to volunteer, no matter how high or how good the technical tools are. What do leaders do to improve this? With virtually everything else in leadership, it's modeling. So leaders have to model the behavior that they desire. And this is very, very much the case with psychological safety. So the fastest and most powerful way for leaders to get other people talking and to get people opening up about their own shortcomings and their failings is to model that themselves and to show vulnerability. And there's many ways to do this, but one of the classic ways is when you're confronted with a problem is to say, okay, guys, anyone got any ideas? That's a very simple one, and it's a very powerful one. The Sioux City airline crash, the DC-10 crash in 1989, Al Hayes, I think was the captain's name. They had a catastrophic failure of a couple of engines. They couldn't steer the aeroplane except for with the thrust levers. And the first words that came out of his mouth was, anyone got any ideas? And that very much set the scene for a very high quality creative discussion from the first officer and the engineer. And they saved many, many lives through that. So admitting vulnerability can be something like just saying, hey, have you guys seen this before? Has anyone seen something like this? Does anyone have any ideas? Or it can be as powerful as starting off your weekly meeting by admitting a mistake that you made. This is one that requires a little bit more courage out of the leader. And this is all, of course, tied up with our own ego, especially as a leader. What you're dealing with the leader is ego. What you're dealing with the team members is their very, very strong desire to be accepted by the group. And we all have, because of our evolutionary background and the fact that tribes and groups of people were so fundamentally important to our survival 100,000 years ago, 2 million years ago, that we are hypersensitive to feelings of being rejected by groups. Because if we get rejected by the group, the consequence was death. And that's deeply built into our physiology. So as the leader, put your ego aside, and fess up, show that you're vulnerable, show that you don't have the solutions, show that you need the team. And for the team members themselves, what you're trying to do is to make them feel safe. And by the leader modeling that behavior, the team members will go, oh, the boss just admitted that he made an error. And basically what happened, was bad, wasn't good for team performance, but he admitted that. So I guess I'm safe to also do that. So long way to say, by modeling the behavior yourself, show vulnerability yourself as a leader.
It's a trait that defines the culture of the organization very deeply. No, when you have a leader that says, "Okay, I'm vulnerable, I'm original, that's me."
Yep.
And I was talking with my daughter in the last AMA episode that we did. She said, "What's the best advice you could give to anyone, or what is the best advice that you received during your career?" And I said to her, "Look, it was 2000. I was a young lieutenant, just assigned to the squadron, and the deputy CEO, the deputy commander, he closed the door, said, 'Come in, okay? You are the last guy. It doesn't mean that we're doing everything right. You need to speak up if you see something that doesn't work.' And at the point you are empowering me to speak up, no fear of what I'm saying." I mean, obviously there is a code of language that you need to use, but anyway, it's a big thing it's a huge power that you receive as a young guy, because you come from that regiment where you are all lined up and following orders, to a point where, okay, this guy wants to count on me, and he wants to build trust, because I'm saying the things from a different perspective, and I can speak up. So this is the advice that we can give to anyone in the moment that they are struggling with psychological safety and they feel that their team is not empowered, or is not interactive, like you said, silence.
Yep.
It's not interactive. Now, I give you this possibility. Okay, please speak up, because I need to know what is in your mind. And in the book, Meaningful Work, that I was talking about before in the background, it's all about creating a community, creating that kind of contribution, and then challenging as well the team members. In the last episode, I talked with Jim Cook about delegation, and delegation comes to psychological safety. I mean, I think it's the logical step that you are gonna probably discuss with your teams. Tell me a little bit about delegation in a psychological safe environment.
So it's very much related. What you need to delegate is trust, and you need to have your team to have technical competence. So when you join a new team, it's quite difficult for us to delegate, because if the team's got if the larger organization has a very strong culture, we may have trust, but we're not sure of the technical competence inside the team. So we don't go immediately and start delegating huge tasks when we join a new team. We have to establish that level of trust and competence, but we own that as leaders. That's our job. And we always must be looking to increase those two factors, trust and technical competence. As those two things develop, what we can do is start giving responsibility and delegating tasks. And with that, though, we push responsibility down, but we must pull risk up. So we must always push responsibility down to where the information is rich, and we delegate a task. We tell them what the outcome we want is, but you go and plan it. You decide how to do it. We empower them by doing that. But we must let them know that if they screw up, or the quality of the outcome is not quite as good as what we kind of expect, that's okay. And by doing that, you allow them to unleash their full creativity. I remember seeing this. I remember when I was just before my F18 course, I was flying the Mackie for a couple of years. And I remember whenever I would go up and lead a mission with an instructor in the back, I would be kind of trying to brief and lead this mission and tactically be a good leader when we were airborne. But I always felt this presence behind me. And especially if he would interject and give me, tips, it was like, I just feel like I want to be by myself. And I noticed that when I would go out and lead by myself with no one in the back seat, I just loved it. It was such a cool feeling. And sometimes there would be a staff member, but he would be in the wingman's back seat. When I came back to that same squadron as an instructor, I made it one of my traits that I was always going to get the guys, if they were leading, you lead solo. So I made sure that I delegated the task. I give them a tactical problem to solve and then just let them go and do it. And I can remember how engaged they were and how much they learned. So when we delegate, we need to let the team know that if they make mistakes, that's okay. That's part of learning. And it is part of learning. Anytime we're trying to perform at the highest possible level, mistakes will happen. That's okay. I retain the overall responsibility, like the risk of what comes out of the execution. You go and do your absolute best job. And of course, it's difficult. But running a high performance team is not easy. We have to put our ego aside. It's not easy. That's why not many people do it. Most people want to micromanage because they don't have the courage to delegate. They want to micromanage because they fear the loss of control. They fear the loss of the control over the quality of the outcome, and they fear loss of control over the actual solution that the team will come up with. But a good leader knows that the benefit on the individual by building leaders and the benefit on the organization and the benefit for them that they can step back and look at the bigger picture whilst the team below them goes ahead and performs and executes the task is well and truly worth it. So delegation is an absolute leadership superpower and very much tied in with this idea of making people feel comfortable to if they make a mistake, we're learning. Exactly. And it's like, it's the opposite of this blame culture, I think, is curiosity. So instead of blaming, it's like, okay, a mistake happened. Why did that happen? What contributed to it? It's not like who did that. It's like, okay, what contributed to that error?
Asking relevant questions. Yeah,
exactly.
Asking relevant question. You're bringing a valid point. Sometimes as a leader, you get there that you are a very young leader. So you need to build your own confidence. And so you have leaders that their mindset has to shift because they are not delegating, because they think they can do everything in the mission or whatever is the business. But there are also young leaders that they are growing, and now it's very difficult for them to delegate, the young ones to get. So but it's part of the process. It's part of the, as you said, it's trust and tech competence as well. And delegation needs backup. It's not like, okay, I'm delegating you, now you do it, done, abandon. As you said, responsibility, and more than responsibility, accountability. If there is a task, the mission commander intent is that one. The mission leader, the flight leader, is the one that is accountable for the result. You can delegate everything else to the others, but in the end is the one responsible. I was looking at this graph exactly today, and there is in high performance team a graph where the right hand corner is high performance and high expectation and high support. Okay, that's the right hand corner where you, with your teams, and myself, we want to work, with the athletes or with the pilots or with business, right? Can you fill in on this one?
I can, yeah. So this is the one that I use, and this I had to use this earlier this year. I had a client who I was continually talking about psychological safety and how important it is. And he came back at me and said, well, I think it's actually, we've got too much of it. We're too safe because people aren't really, they're just like, oh, well, I made a mistake, doesn't matter. And I thought about that for quite a while. And went and found this chart, which is, it's so true. Like, psychological safety by itself is not enough. We have to have standards, or expectations, as I think that you mentioned. So what we're talking about there is that far top right corner, the learning zone. That's the high performance zone, where we have high standards with high safety. And if we have low standards and low safety, I mean, those kind of teams probably aren't that common, certainly not in the military or in sport. That's where people don't care. They're apathetic. I think what's much more common is we have high standards but low safety, and this is that anxiety zone. So people feel like they're walking on eggshells. They come to work and they just try to keep their head down. I've got a very quick story about these two zones. So when I first got out in my first fighter squadron, we were for sure up in that high performance zone, in the learning zone. We had very high standards. I think we were probably the best fighter squadron in Australia at that particular time. But we had executives that made us feel very safe. We had one executive that left the squadron and was replaced by another, and we immediately slipped down into the anxiety zone. So we had the same required standard, but all of a sudden we were trying to keep our heads down, and we were trying not to make mistakes, because it became very clear that mistakes are not tolerated as well. Of course, they still understood that we were learning, but you just got this feeling. It was almost a subconscious feeling that you don't want to screw up now. And I know that we didn't perform as well that year because of that. And if we had the same leaders, I think I would have grown more as a fighter pilot. So yeah, I think that's a very important point. Psychological safety is not enough by itself. It has to be accompanied by high standards or high expectations of what the team is out to do.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that psychological safety is based on high support? I mean, we're talking about coaching here, so effectively, when you're trying to create an environment where you want to empower not just the next generation, but also we're talking always about empowering the young ones, but also empowering the leaders, okay? Because that's what you're doing in a high performance team. You're empowering also the leaders. We need support, okay? So how a leader is able to design a system where he can support his teams, his team members, his other leaders, okay? Because this is very important. We're talking about effectively coaching. So something that Bill Campbell would do in his teams, something that Bill Walsh tried to do, and then he regretted at the end when he finished his career that he was like, I wish I had delegated more, or I wish I had coached a little bit better my leaders, my coaches.
Yeah, so I think, again, it comes back to modeling it. So the leaders have to model the behavior. They have to model delegation. That grows leaders. But there's always going to be cases, and this is probably what it's like for the majority of people that listen to this podcast. They might have good intentions about delegating. They might have great intentions about building psychological safety. They might want to have a great culture, but they're inside an organization, a larger organization, which doesn't support that. So we take a team leader that's got 5 direct reports. They're a very motivated leader. They're watching this podcast. They're trying to learn, but they think, well, but my boss is not like that. The thing about leadership, and the reason it's so satisfying and it's so powerful, is that for your team, it doesn't matter what the people above are like. They care about you. You set the environment. So when you come to work, you are the most important person in creating that environment for your team. If you're in a global organization and the CEO is super old school, doesn't tolerate mistakes, whatever, it doesn't matter for your direct reports, because you are the person that protects them and creates that environment. So I think part of it is realizing for leaders that we have that impact. I was going to say power, but power is probably not the right word, but certainly we have that impact. So for our direct reports, it is us that creates that environment. So we can't use the excuse that my larger organization doesn't have a nice culture or doesn't create safety. You're the person that matters for your direct reports. So I think, to answer your question, modeling the behavior, doing your best. And as a leader, thinking mostly like looking, I call it looking down instead of looking up. A lot of people in the corporate world are, quite frankly, are there for themselves. They're trying to climb up, they're trying to get promoted, which is fair enough. But I think a high quality leader will spend most of the time not looking up, looking down at his direct reports, and how he can build and sustain an environment which creates the maximum potential in there. And psychological safety is an absolutely critical attribute to do that.
You started before, you were defining psychological safety as a soft skill, effectively. And so, in the mind of people, you have kind of an holistic approach to psychological safety, where you say, okay, if the environment has this culture, as the organization has this culture, then good enough, everybody's growing. But the reality is, and it's crazy, I've read some researches about having meaningful workplaces where people are involved in the community, and it's not like community going for a barbecue the weekend. It's involved in like what's happening in the organization, or they give their contribution because some tasks have been delegated to them, and then they are challenged because these tasks sometimes are not easy, but they are at their level, like coach should. Then productivity increases hugely. So if you are a leader and you're a little bit selfish, you don't want to delegate, you must know that your organization will benefit from this, because productivity will increase, and there are going to be numbers at this point. You're transforming something that is like that, holistic, okay, psychological safety, a bright environment to work, yes, but your organization is going to be more proactive. And we've seen it. At some point, my squadron, we were like really small. So commanding officer, we had just 2 officers. We were all like wingmen or young, peer leaders. And the bosses were like, okay, dude, you need to go here and do this mission. Are you peer leader? Yes. But I just did my qualification. Yeah, that's okay. You can do it, So effectively, you see the metrics, you see the productivity when you're living in that kind of environment.
Yeah, absolutely. You've felt it and you remember it. And this is the thing I was saying. I remember it when I was flying the Mackie. I remember how much I loved that feeling of responsibility and just getting, I can go out. These guys are trusting me to go out and do this job. And everyone wants that. Everyone wants to have responsibility and wants to be empowered to create. On your point about giving up the control, I've got a friend that runs very successful 2 global businesses, and he's got a rule that he uses because he's thought about this quite a lot. He thinks if he believes that the person that he delegates the task to will do a job 70% as well as he does, then he thinks the benefit is there to delegate the task. And that's a huge step, because for some people that are, everything's got to be like 98, 99, 100%, to have the courage to delegate, even if you believe the solution's only going to be 70% as good as yours, is difficult. However, that's his rule. And the benefit to him is that he obviously has the brain space to step back and monitor the bigger picture, which is part of our job as a leader. The benefit to the individual, he's growing another leader there. He's growing someone, getting them to take on responsibility. And the benefit to the organization is there as well, because it just creates so much empowerment and builds leaders throughout. So yeah, super important skill. Back on your point about it helps the organization, so why don't we do it? This is very, very true. And what happens when we first join a particular industry is that we do a good job, hopefully, and we get promoted. And we all must realize that for the rest of our lives after that first promotion, our success, like how we go, how fast we get promoted, is basically based on the performance of the teams that we're leading. It's not really our technical performance anymore. We obviously have an input, but if our team does an excellent job, then we're going to get promoted. And if the next team, the bigger team, does an excellent job, we're going to get promoted again. So it's not a soft skill. It's a critical skill, and it's a skill that's used in all of the meanest, toughest military special forces teams. It's used in Formula One teams, the best ones certainly. It's used in the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team. So you can say it's a soft skill, but the hardest teams on the planet are very, very good at it.
Yes, let's get practical a little bit. Let's give some tactical tips. I'm gonna steal one of yours that you just said that, but as a leader, show your vulnerability. Lead by example. If you made a mistake, just pick up in the debrief. Just pick up when you made the mistake, and show your humanity at the point so that people can open up and feel safe in saying the same, in having the same attitude. That would be a pretty good mind shift, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that. So this leaving the ego outside, in high performance teams, the highest performing teams, the teams that have the most tangible reason to have big egos, the egos are the lowest. And I'm sure you've seen that in the best fighter squadrons that I was a part of, were the squadrons where everyone was humble. They're constantly looking for weakness inside themselves and inside the team to improve. So yeah, I think that's showing vulnerability is a huge one. I think another one is developing self-awareness. So when a mistake is made, our immediate response is normally to find blame. So to try and just be aware of that, and when we make a mistake ourselves, we want to blame something. When one of our teammates makes a mistake, we want to blame them for the mistake, is to try and switch that so that instead of blame, we're now curious. We look at the situation with curiosity. We look at, okay, that's interesting. Why did that happen? That's interesting. I made a mistake. Why did I make the mistake? It was me. It was me. I'm not going to blame the jet. I'm not going to blame my first officer. That was me. So why did that happen? So that switch, I think, from blame to curiosity as part of like our awareness when we see a mistake happen is also another useful tool.
It creates kind of a structure for feedback. Okay, so if I have to give an advice to a coach, to a leader, like you're saying, create a structure for feedback so that in the debriefing you have a structure, you have the points that you want to go through, and you just write down things. Sometimes soft skill become too much like this in the air. No, write down things. Okay, I think another one that is I like a lot, especially when I'm working with the young guys, is giving them challenges. So it's not really delegating at the point, but giving tasks that are challenging for them, so that now whatever was in the books or whatever was in the experience that they had, they need to research, they need to grow by review. You come into the briefing, you're asking me, we're doing an intercept, and you don't know the symbology of this radar feature, whatever. Okay, just find it for tomorrow. Okay, because I know this is difficult to find it. The manuals are like 7,000 pages. Okay, so you need to find that little thing, which is a challenge for you. Come back, and then because I know the answer, but I want you to find it. No? So try to bond a little bit with the young guys, giving them challenges that at the moment they're like, oh, I'm not gonna find this one. I don't have time or whatever. No. Go through the challenge. So challenge and then feedback for me, two practical ways of building this culture.
Yeah, of course. And if it's done in a way, I mean, these signals are so subtle. If it's done in a way that the trainee, the coachee, your direct report knows that you are genuinely trying to make them better and you're trying to make the team better, then it will be well received. If it's done in a way that, you see some leaders that virtually every interaction they have, they're trying to manage their status and they're trying to ensure that everyone knows that they're the boss. And we see through that. But if it's done with authenticity and the person feels that actually, you're really there just trying to make them a better fighter pilot in this case, or a better triathlete, or a better first officer, then it is well received and they take it on board.
What's one conversation a leader could have this week that creates more safety and empowerment? So imagine you are the leader of an organization, of a team, and now you want to have a discussion with your team players and you want to empower them and make sure that they understand they are in a safe environment.
So I think the best opportunity to do this is, again, in a meeting. I know everyone has 5, 10, 15 meetings a week. Do it in a meeting, because that's when you got the team gathered together. Provided that it's not a briefing or a lecture, it's actually a meeting where we're trying to hear what other people have to say. Great opportunity. Start there, and start by maybe doing a social connection activity at the beginning of the meeting. One of the great ones that I use with the Formula One team that I consult and coach with is everyone goes around the table and talks about the biggest thing that's happening inside their life outside Formula One. And what that does is helps us see each other as people, and we maybe share something that's sensitive, and it's like, oh yeah, that's why that guy's been a bit grumpy, or that's why she was really tired last week because her child's been sick or whatever. So that's quite a cool one. So social connection. And then depending on where you are in this process, you may just start with something like, okay, guys, does anyone have any ideas about this problem we're discussing today? If you're a beginner. If you're quite advanced and you've got a reasonably high level of psychological safety, and you're quite I guess an advanced leader in this respect, you could start off by sharing a mistake. Sharing a mistake for a lot of leaders might be too big to start with, but that's certainly a powerful way to build safety. So encourage everyone else to talk. Realize that if you're doing most of the talking, that's not a good way to be. You want to encourage people to talk, and you want to show that you don't have the answers.
Okay, Rico, this has been another great one. Okay, thanks for the insight, mate, and for making this stuff real and useful. Next time, we're gonna attack another topic. We don't have an idea yet. Maybe.
No worries.
Yes. Okay. If you got something about this episode, or you have questions, or you have a new mindset, you can share it with your team leaders, with your leaders. And also, if you have any questions, you can ask through the handles that are down here in the notes. This is Tools for the Pilots. Thank you for being here, Rico. I am TC. To the next one.
Thanks very much, TC. See you next time.